refers to how different industries are classified and differentiated based on their degree and nature of competition for goods and services. So factors that determine the structure are a number of buyers and sellers, the ability of consumers to negotiate pricing, degree of concentration, so how many competitors in the industry, degree of product differentiation, and level of companies entering and exiting the market, barriers to entry. So types of market structures include the perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. So the most competitive is perfect competition. Perfect competition is very good for consumers because prices are driven to the lowest point possible. So they're the best for consumers, which is good for us. So like something like groceries, it's good for us for, let's say, groceries. It's cheaper for us if groceries are perfectly competitive. They Yeah, so it's better for us because we pay the lowest possible cost if it's perfectly competitive. Monopolistic competition is when it's it's competitive, but they can still price a bit higher than perfect competition because they can differentiate themselves. So with monopolistic competition, they can still differentiate themselves. So for example, cell phone companies they can differentiate themselves based on technology, brand, etc. Also, fast food falls under that here. So they can differentiate themselves, so they're a bit different than the competition, and then they can charge higher prices to do that. Oligopoly is when companies are in an industry where there's not a lot of competition. So, for example, Bell and Rogers in Canada, they're in the telecommunications industry. They don't have a lot of competition. It's mostly just them owning most of the industry. Also, Pepsi and Coca-Cola would fall under that too because they own most of the market for soft drinks. So they don't have to deal with a lot of competition and they can raise prices to higher amounts because of lack of competition. So it's good for investors for this. Investing in oligopolies like that are good for investors because there's a lot of profits to be made because they can price higher. Monopoly is when one company owns the industry. So for example, there's only a few examples of monopolies out there. The Amazon is one of the closest ones that we have, and that's great for investors because they can price at very high levels and maximize profits. So because they don't have any competition, they can maximize profits, and that's good for investors. So market structures characteristics, perfect competition, large number of firms in the industry. Companies produce goods that are the same or very similar. Each company produces only a small amount of the total industry production. Producers have no control over pricing. Pricing is set solely by supply and demand, e.g., foreign exchange markets, agriculture. That would fall under perfect competition in this case. Monopoly, a single firm in the industry controls all production/sales of goods service, has control of pricing, has high barriers to entry, very difficult for new companies to enter market. Usually barriers are technological or legal. So public utilities fall under that and Canada Post. So subways, the GO train, public transit, it's a monopoly, but the reason why they're not so expensive is because the government owns them. So the government makes the price as low as possible for public transit. And that's good for us because if Uber operated our public transit, if Uber was our public transit, the price of public transit would be too high. So that's why the government operates it because they can price it at a lower level. Because if Uber operated a public transit, it would be too expensive for us to commute. So monopolistic competition, many firms in the market, products are similar, but not exactly the same. They have more control over pricing because of some differentiation. Barriers to entry are lower, easier to enter the market, e.g. clothing and food industries. Oligopoly, only a few firms produce most or all of the output. Actions of one firm impacts other firms more greatly. Each firm closely watches what others are doing, pricing, production, etc. Pricing is usually similar between firms. Barriers to entry are higher, more difficult to enter the market. Usually requires large capital or other factors that are difficult to overcome, e.g., Apple or Google, smartphone operating systems, telecommunications, and industry in Canada. So those would be examples. So this is a very good chart. It's under the market structures PowerPoint in week 3, and you can refer to this if you wish. So perfect competition, there's many number of firms in the market. Pure monopoly, there's only one. Monopolistic competition, there's many firms in the market, but fewer than perfect competition. Oligopoly, there's few firms in the market. Perfect competition has no ability to control price. Pure monopoly has a high ability to control price. Monopolistic competition has some ability to control price. Oligopoly has some ability to control price. There's no barriers to entry to perfect competition. There's for pure monopoly, it's subject to government regulation for barriers to entry. Monopolistic competition, there's few barriers to entry. And then oligopoly, there's many barriers to entry. Product differentiation, perfect competition, there's very little. Pure monopoly, there's no products that compete directly. Monopolistic competition, emphasis on showing perceived differences in products. Oligopoly, some differences. Examples of perfect competition are farm products such as wheat and corn. Pure monopoly, utilities such as gas, water, cable, television. Monopolistic competition examples: retail, specialty clothing stores. Oligopoly, steel, automobiles, airlines, aircraft manufacturers. Supply and demand markets. A market is a place where buyers and sellers come into contact. Do all markets have a physical presence? Answer no. Amazon, eBay, small ads, etc. Perfect competition market assumption. Many buyers and sellers, perfect knowledge of prices are at the market, rational consumers and producers basing decisions on prices, no government intervention, e.g. price control. So what is this picture? Exchange rates. What does it illustrate? Near perfect markets. Why? Many buyers and sellers. Prices fluctuate freely according to demand and supply. So with exchange rates, it's as close to perfect competition as possible because there's so many buyers and sellers. Law of demand: as price of a good or service goes up, demand for it goes down. So yeah, if the price or service goes up, demand for it will go down. Because people, when things become more expensive, people buy less of it. So as price increases, consumers tend to stop buying or replace certain items with other cheaper options if possible. So some goods or services are bought because they're of this perceived exclusivity due to their high price. In other words, people are willing to pay high prices for a luxury product or service. The higher the price, the more luxurious the product, so demand is even higher. So example is 7-star hotels like the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. If consumers expect prices to rise in the future, they may buy more despite the rise, so don't have to pay even more later. Difficult to do when services, though. Gas consumption: a consumer expects gas prices to increase again. They may fill up the car before it does. So as price of a good or service goes up, supply of it goes up for law of supply. Because if the supplier can charge a higher price for it, they're going to supply more of it because they're going to make more money on it. So as price increases, suppliers are more motivated by more profit and increase supply and or new suppliers enter market. So markets in action: a queue is an indication of disequilibrium between demand and supply. Ticket scalpers can charge a lot more than official prices because there's more demand than supply. If there is more demand than supply, they can charge more price. So maximum prices. So if there's a fixed supply of tickets, there may be there may be there might be an undersupply, so prices will eventually rise. So perfect market: many buyers and sellers, consumers behave rationally, consumers are fully aware of pricing, no government intervention. Law of demand: as price increases, quantities demanded decreases, a few exceptions. As law of supply: as price increases,